ما يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Praise be to Allah with His help and His forgiveness. We seek refuge with Allah. We seek refuge with Allah from the evil of our own souls and our bad deeds. Whomsoever Allah guides will never be led astray, and whomsoever Allah leads astray, no one can guide. I bear witness that there is no one worthy of worship except Allah. He is one, He has no partners. And I bear witness that Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is a servant and Allah's messenger. Or you believe fear Allah as it should be fair and I am not accepting the state of Islam. Or you believe keep your duty to Allah and fear Him and speak always the truth. He Allah will direct righteous deeds and will forgive your sins. And whosoever obeys Allah and His messenger has indeed achieved a great achievement. Brothers and sisters, I want to start off with a verse that many of us are familiar with from the 6th chapter of the Quran, Surah Al-An'am. And I'm looking specifically at verse 162. In this particular verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. And He starts off with قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, behold, or He tells us to say, behold my prayer and all of my acts of worship and my living and my dying are for Allah alone, the sustainer of the worlds. Brothers and sisters, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrated the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is report to have said, charity does not in any way decrease the wealth, and the servant who forgives, Allah adds to his respect, and the one who shows humility, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alleviates him in the estimation of the people, or He elevates him in the sight of people. I started with this particular verse today, brothers and sisters, in terms of where we often say, behold my prayer, my service or my acts of sacrifice, my living and my dying are for Allah, right? Many of us, we hear that, we live that, we tell ourselves we live that, right? That it's something that gets hammered into us, yeah? That my life and my death and my service and all of these things are for Allah. But when you say that, brothers and sisters, what does that really mean? What does that look like when we say that our living and our dying, our acts of worship, all of these things are for Allah? What does that look like for you living in Philadelphia? What does that look like for you living in the suburbs of Philadelphia? What does that look like for you traveling up and down in these United States or traveling across the globe? What does that look like for each and every single one of us when we're at work, when we're at home, when we're worshiping? Right? What does that look like? What do we mean when we say that our lives and our death is for none but Allah, the Lord of all the world? Alhamdulillah, brothers and sisters, we're here today for another Friday. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen us to be here for whatever reason He in His infinite wisdom has chosen for us to be here. Because we know for a fact that if it wasn't for the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that some of us might be in the movie theaters right now watching Black Panther, right? So had it not been for the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we may not be here right now. Even if we made the intention to be here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that under His control, right? We got up, we made a hustle, we say we're going to come to Jumu'ah, and then Allah could have decided a very different path for us. So with that in mind, brothers and sisters, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us to be here today. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to benefit from whatever we are gathered here to benefit from today. Whether it be from something that I say, from something that you hear, from someone else, from something that you do, from something that you see, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows each and every single one of us to benefit in some way from being here today, whether we realize that benefit immediately or not. Ameen. We pray for the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showers him and continues to shower him and shower his memory and his legacy with his choicest blessings. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows the light of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to live in the hearts of those who continue to emulate his example. And we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us as believers to lift up in ranks the name and the memory of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and his family, Ahlul Bayt. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to have softened hearts towards them and softened hearts towards the teachings that they have bestowed upon us. Ameen, ameen, ameen. Brothers and sisters, I say this each time, right? So for the past few months I've been saying this, that we are consistently in this battle, right? Adam alayhi salam, he was in this battle that we're in today, right? This battle with ourselves. And there's nothing that is going to take us out of that battle except death. The only thing that stops us from battling with ourselves, from fighting that war with ourselves, is when we are put into the ground. Before that, we are consistently battling with ourselves. Every single minute of every day, we are battling with ourselves. And if we have any doubt about that, then we don't know who Shaitan is. Because if we say that, you know what, yeah, between 10 and 12 now, Shaitan doesn't affect me. You know, Shaitan will mess with me between 1 and 2. If you have that as an agreement between you and Allah, or as an agreement between you and Shaitan, then mashallah. But since none of us have that agreement, we are battling ourselves 24/7. So we pray that all those who continue to support various causes in spite of things that might be affecting them or afflicting them, we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows you to reap the rewards of that. To all of you who continue to support Cuba, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards you in spite of whatever challenges you have in your support of Cuba. Whether it be financial, something battling yourself, whatever it is, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards you. Brothers and sisters, the last time I was here, I spoke about standing firm. I spoke about how if we are committed to change, then we need to stand firm, because there's no change, there's no Islam without change. I mentioned that if we choose to stand firm, then brothers and sisters, definitely we will be tested. And that when we choose to stand firm, other than being tested, we are certain that we will lose something. Because if Allah tells us that the believers are those who get tested with loss, and we have to stand firm on this deen, I can guarantee you that somewhere in our lives, we will lose something in our standing firm for this Islam. And when it comes to losing something, when it comes to standing firm, we have to be ready and resilient to hold on to our Islam in spite of that. And brothers and sisters, there is no alternative to the success that we seek if we are not willing to stand firm and if we are not willing to fight for change. But today, brothers and sisters, I want to push this a bit further. You see, it's easy to talk about change and standing firm. However, brothers and sisters, all of this is wrapped up in this idea of submission. And submission comes with a cost. Submission comes with a cost. There is no submission without paying a price. So when we submit, we give up something of ourselves. And that, dear brothers and sisters, is the price of submission. However, what we give up is up to us, and it's based on what we submit to. So I'll give you the first scenario that none of us want to be in. We can submit to Shaitan, we can submit to our nafs. And what are we giving up when we do that? What is the opportunity cost of submitting to Shaitan or submitting to our nafs? We lose respect in this life. We lose some of the benefit in this life. But most importantly, we lose some of the benefit of the hereafter. Or we lose the benefit of the hereafter, depending on how far we go. So when we submit, we give up something. Now let's flip that around. What if we chose to submit to Allah and His Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? What are we giving up? What do we lose when we submit to Allah and His Messenger? Brothers and sisters, I want to argue that we may lose our pride, we may lose our ego, we may lose some of our selfishness, we may lose some temporary things that we have, but in the grand scheme of things, we don't lose anything. To fully submit, brothers and sisters, or for submission to happen, and I'm going to only highlight two things here in the interest of time. For submission to happen, brothers and sisters, we have to be willing to not be part of the crowd. For submission to happen, we have to be willing to not be part of the crowd or to challenge the status quo. For submission to happen, we need to be able to delay, or we need to be willing to delay gratification. If we are saying we are submitting, we have to be willing to challenge ourselves from going with the group when the group is going in a direction that we shouldn't be going into, and we have to be willing to say, you know what, I can hold off on this happiness for right now, or delay gratification. Before I continue, brothers and sisters, I want to pray that we find an ease to the spate of school shootings and violence in general in our various communities.
Amen.
I pray that we see racism and white privilege challenged more in the media and in centers of power.
Amen.
And I pray that we challenge those demons within ourselves and not just be part of the group that talks about these ills.
Amen.
So brothers and sisters, as I said, for submission to happen, we need to not be part of the crowd. It is easy to be part of the crowd, brothers and sisters. Whether we are introverted or extroverted, it is easy to go with the norm. What does it mean by it's easy to go with the norm? Look at anything that society is doing right now. Right? It's easy to jump on the bandwagon. Yeah? Putting our lives on public display that is happening outside, it's easy for us to jump on that bandwagon. Yeah? For some of our youth engaging and looking at things that they shouldn't be looking at, whether it be pornography or anything like that, it's easy to jump on that bandwagon. If a group of people are sitting there talking ill about someone, it's easy to jump on that bandwagon and engage in that khiba and namima. I am challenging us to fight against following the crowd. And this is not me saying that right now a lot of people are going to see that movie. Right? This is not me saying that you shouldn't go see the movie. By all means, enjoy it. But what I am saying here is this. As a people, when something comes out that celebrates, and I'm speaking to my African American brothers and sisters here. As a people, when something comes out that celebrates blackness, we get proud, but sometimes we get carried away. What do I mean by that? It is perfectly okay to be excited about being black and representing blackness as a Muslim. But what we see happening sometimes is we get so carried away with this that all of a sudden we start engaging in bigotry and demeaning others who don't represent that group that we are part of. And that is a problem. So as we are having these serious conversations and these serious arguments about an imaginary place called Wakanda, let us realize that we are really giving up something here, part of our souls. So when we are engaging in these conversations about blackness, and someone says something disparaging about someone of another race, and we join in that, we are part of the problem. That is us joining the crowd. we need to challenge that. If people start engaging in things that are bigoted and discriminatory, then we need to say, no, that is not what we represent as Muslims. Because part of this whole thing is getting the title or the titles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us. And we get those titles by choosing not to be part of the crowd. What do I mean by that? Let us look at any of our examples, and I'll pick 3 of them in our history. I want to look at the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. I want to look at the Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and I want to look at the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. They all chose, each and every single one of them chose not to be part of the crowd. And when they chose to be other than part of the crowd or to go against the status quo, what did Allah do? Allah conferred upon them very specific attributes. When Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam chose to go against what his general community was doing, what title did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him? He became known as Khalilullah. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, وَتَخَذَ اللَّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the title of friend of Allah, or the one who is close to Allah. Why? Because he chose to go against the norm. When Prophet Musa alayhi salam chose to go against the norm, what title did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him? Prophet Musa alayhi salam was known as Kalimullah, the one to whom Allah spoke. Why did Allah choose to speak to Prophet Musa alayhi salam? Because he fought against what was happening. Then let's look at the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He had many titles. One of the titles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him was Al-Mustafa, the chosen one. Why did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam get this title? Because he fought against the norm. He chose to seclude himself. He chose to meditate. He chose not to follow what everyone else was doing. And what did Allah do? Allah elevated his status. These titles were given to them, brothers and sisters, because they chose to submit. They made that conscious decision that we are going to submit to Allah. As Muslims, do we get titles as well? Is there a place in Islam for us as Muslims to get titles when we choose to submit? I want to start with a very simple one. Al-Mu'minun. Is that a title? It is. How do we get that? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. That's the entryway. That's getting into the door. That's like you've been given a key to open the door, but you haven't opened the door as yet. How do you get to attain the title of Al-Mu'minun? Well, let's look at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in His glorious Quran. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Right? Successful indeed are the believers. الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Those who humble themselves in prayer. Those who give themselves completely unto Allah. Those who turn away from distractions. Those who guard their chastity, those who keep their promises. All of these things are things that we have to do to get this title of Al-Mu'minun. It doesn't just happen without submission. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, or He refers to us as Al-Mukhbitin, we get the title of Al-Mukhbitin when we submit ourselves to Allah. We acknowledge Him as the one and only God, and we give glad tidings to those who are humble. How do we get the title of As-Sabirin, the patient ones? We get that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned of those who are As-Sabirin. When Allah starts off in the Quran, or He says at the end of one verse, وَبَشِرُ الصَّابِرِينَ, He then goes on to say, so when He says, and give glad tidings to those who are patient, He then goes on to say, الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّ لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّ إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. So give glad tidings to those who are patient. And who are the ones who are patient? When an evil befalls them, what do they say? They say, verily from Allah we come, and to Him is our return. So I want to put this in context for us, right? Because this is how I started off. How do we submit? What does submission look like to us here as Muslims? Let's say, for the sake of argument, we are faced with a calamity, we are faced with something, with a trial. Whether it be a family member who dies, whether it be loss of property that we have, loss of a job, whatever it is, whatever loss that we incur. And what happens when we turn around and then we start cursing the one God? Or we start asking ourselves, why is this happening to me? How do we expect to get the title of As-Sabirin when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that when we are faced with a challenge, what should we do? Say that from Him we come and to Him is our return. If we are doing that, how do we expect to earn the title? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about Ibadur Rahman, the servants of the Most Gracious, this is a title that we can get. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. The servants of the Most Gracious, what do? They walk on the earth with humility. So I want to digress here for a second. When we hear verses like this, that the servants of the Most Gracious walk on the earth in humility, right? Or they walk on the earth and they are humble. When we hear a verse like this, what do we say to ourselves? Alhamdulillah, I'm humble. Is that what we say? Or, when this happens, when we hear a verse like this, we say, MashaAllah, I don't walk on the earth with pride. Same side of the different coins, different side of the same coin. Because if we say that we are humble, or we say that, you know what, I'm not walking with pride, we're saying the same exact thing. We're just saying it in a way that we can digest it. It's the same thing. When we hear verses like this, do we say, Ya Allah, don't make me among those who have pride. Ya Allah, make me among those who walk on the earth humbly. If when we hear these verses, this is not what we are saying, something is wrong with us. Almost each khutbah I give, I narrate a verse from the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us, وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنْ عِبَادِيَ الشَّكُورِ. Few are truly grateful among my servants. So we hear the verse, there are only a few who are truly grateful among the servants of Allah. When we hear that verse, what do we say? Well, Alhamdulillah, I thank so and so when he did this. Alhamdulillah, I think I'm grateful. Alhamdulillah, is that what we say? If that's what we say, we are missing this thing completely. Because if when we hear a group that is defined in its highest order in the Quran, and we immediately put ourselves in that group, then we are thinking way too high of ourselves, brothers and sisters. How do we know that Allah is speaking to us in that one? How do I know that I am of the few truly grateful ones? What tells me that I am that? It is more likely that I am not part of that group. It is more likely that I am not part of the Sabirin. It is more likely that I am not part of these groups. Why? Because each and every single one of us knows that we are consistently battling things that take us out of these groups. Now mind you, this is not to say that we're all walking around here as a bag of evil, right? Like everybody here just evil incarnate. Because even as I mentioned this, we still have to take it within context of our Islam, right? And the way we take it in context of our Islam is that, let's say you have an incident where you don't show patience. That doesn't mean that you are forever not patient. Yeah? Because this thing is a continuum. If most of the times I show patience, then it's possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might count me in that group. It's possible, but I don't know. And the danger is in telling ourselves that we have it going on. So if there's nothing else we are taking away from what I'm saying right now, brothers and sisters, is this. To get to these titles that I've mentioned, in many cases we may have to do the opposite of what we see others doing around us. We may have to take an unpopular opinion or position. And it depends on the circles that you find yourselves in. Some of us may be in circles of the most righteous ones, and we don't have to battle all of these things all the time, alhamdulillah. But many of us, we aren't in these circles all the time. So if you're submitting, brothers and sisters, as I said, then you have to go against the norm. So for example, I want to speak to the young students here, right? The students here. So take, for example, you're in school and a fight breaks out. You have options. You can join the fight. You can egg people on. You can try to stop it. Or you can call an adult. Only some of these actions are part of the submission that we're talking about here today. Stopping the wrong or calling an adult. Joining it, egging them on, is not the submission that we are talking about. You are hearing more and more about people who reject leadership and becoming quote-unquote unmasked. What do you do when you hear that? Do you join the conversation and say, yeah, you know what, leadership is really bad, and this is why I also don't go to the masjid? Is that what we say, or do we say, you know what, no. What we need to do is to figure out ways to support the things that are problematic to make them better. Because if our rallying cry, if when we hear these things, our decision is to also go in the direction that is taking us away from our Islam, then we're just going with the norm. And that doesn't give us the titles that we're looking for. It is a norm in Philadelphia. Let me bring this home now. It is a norm in Philadelphia for most of us to not have an imam and not have a community that we belong to. It is a norm. You might say, no, I come to Cuba every Friday for Jumu'ah. Okay. You might say, no, Cuba is my community, I'm there every Friday for Jumu'ah. When there's a call out to do something, are we there? If you're not there, this is not your community. Point blank. How many of us have an imam who, when they come to us and they tell us something, we listen? In a different context, if I wasn't given a khutbah here, I would ask how many of us have somebody we identify as our imam. And I'm almost certain that most of us will not be able to raise our hands. And if we raise our hands, it's because we are doing it in some nebulous way. Well, yeah, I like so-and-so's khutbahs, I like so-and-so's stuff, and that's my imam. That's not your imam. That's the person you like to hear speak. Because if that was your imam, that imam could call you to the carpet today and see you right there the next day with him. Not the usual thing that happens when your imam calls you to the carpet today and then what? You disappear. You don't come back for a couple of years. All of a sudden your job only allows you to go to Juma somewhere else. All of a sudden your whatever it is only allows you to function in a different space. All because what? We got called to the carpet. We got told about ourselves. We got challenged on our nafs. Isn't that what our Islam is, part of what our Islam is about? To challenge ourselves? And I'm not saying if the imam comes to you and he abuses you and he berates you, that's not what I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about if you get called on it. Like for example, the imam knows that you're treating your family badly. And he brings you in and he talks to you and says, you know what? Aki, you can't do that. And then, so up until that point, you've always been coming. But then right after that, you stop coming. Don't turn around and say that that was your imam. Because he wasn't. Because if he was, when he corrected you, you would have heard and obeyed. Submission looks a certain way, brothers and sisters. If my submission is centered on doing what I want and what pleases me, then that submission is most likely submission of my nafs. Brothers and sisters, it's not about strictly about leadership and the supporters of leadership, right? This is about each and every single one of us. Each and every single one of us, no matter what title, we have to submit. I have to submit. You have to submit. We all have to submit. No matter where we are, we have to submit to something. Brothers and sisters, let's push this a little further. When we say we submit, and we hear the verse, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, so right? All of you who believe. Which, how many of us believe? We might all raise our hands. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Ati Allah wa ati Rasul wa ulul amri minkum. Alright. Obey Allah. We know who Allah is. We can obey Allah. Obey the messenger. We know who the messenger is. We can obey the messenger. Obey those charged with authority above you. Who are those who have authority over you? Akhi, who has authority over you? Or you? Sisters like who has authority over you? And if when we read this verse, and we only, if when we read this verse, and only the first two parts of this verse apply to us, and the last part doesn't apply because we have no one who has authority over us, then we're not living our Islam right. How are we part of a community and no one has authority over us? And if this affects and impacts and challenges our sensibilities, alhamdulillah, I'm doing my job. Because this is a problem. I have it, you have it, we all have it in some way, shape, or form. Because for us, there is nobody above us. I worship Allah and His Messenger, I follow Allah and His Messenger, and that is my Islam. Brothers and sisters, who is vested with authority over you in various capacities? Who is? And if we can't identify someone, then we need to look deep within the recesses of our souls to see why. Who is the imam you listen to? Who is a religious leader that you take from? Who is a religious leader that can tell us about us? If we don't have that, then we need to fight this. Can we turn on the fans, please? Turn on the fans, please. But let us get something clear, brothers and sisters. Abdullah ibn Umar, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, said that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the Muslim is required to hear and obey in that which he likes and which he dislikes, unless he is commanded to sin. And when he's commanded to sin, there is no hearing or obeying. I don't want to just throw this out there without any context. But we need to keep certain things in mind. Right? We need to keep certain things in mind. That we don't just get to pick and choose to listen to the things that we like and then say that we are practicing Islam wholeheartedly. Yes? Udkhilu fi silma kafa, right? Enter into Islam wholeheartedly. What does that look like for us? So brothers, I ask you, who has authority over you? Sisters, I ask you, who has authority over you? If there is no one, and I'll end off this point, then we need to check our Islam. For submission to happen, brothers and sisters, we need to be willing to delay our gratification. If we are serious about this, we know that we have to wait for some of our rewards. We may want people to acknowledge us, and we may want to get the rewards of our labor now. In some cases, brothers and sisters, Allah will send us that. Allah will give us the reward now as He has promised. But most likely we will not get what we want. And we will not get it especially if we really want it. So if we've done something for someone, and we really want them to recognize that we've done it, and we are craving that, it is quite possible that we won't get it. And we have to delay that gratification until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ready to give it to us. And it could be in this life or in the hereafter. But submission means that we need to be patient and wait for that gratification. If we don't believe that, then the same thing I spoke about before is what is going to continue to happen. That we give an idea, and when we give an idea, what would we like to happen to our ideas? For our ideas to be accepted. We're in a group, we give an idea, our idea doesn't get accepted, we shut down. We don't give any more ideas. We're at home in our families, and the wife gives the husband a suggestion, and the husband rejects it. And now we have a problem because he didn't take the suggestion. And what if he rejects it 5 times in a row? What if he rejects it 10 months in a row? Does that change how much we should submit? Does anyone rejecting a suggestion that we give change how we submit? And if we are arguing that yes, it changes our submission, then we are missing the point of our Islam. This is not about us being simply devalued. This is not just simply about us being rejected. And all of that, we can have a discussion around all of that. Right now I'm focusing on us and what we choose to do and what submission looks like. Islam has a whole delayed gratification built into it. Everything that pushes us to demand immediate gratification has a higher quality or a counterpoint that is rooted in delayed gratification. So anything that wants us to get satisfied immediately, there is something else that has a higher path to it. Give you a couple of examples within our Islam. A person harms you. We have options. We can respond in kind without transgressing the limits, perfectly halal, no problem there. Depending on what it is, in some cases we can accept payment for the wrong that was done, nothing is wrong there. And then in some cases, we're encouraged to actively forgive. Where do we get the reward for that forgiveness? We don't get it immediately there. That's later on. We give charity. Do we get the immediate reward of giving charity? Most likely not. We get that later on. When I mentioned earlier on that we struggle in the challenges that we have, when we are struggling, are we getting the reward right there from a very basic level? Not necessarily. We get that reward later on. Brothers and sisters, our Islam has delayed gratification built into it because that is part of our submission. This whole Jannah thing, this whole paradise thing, is delayed gratification personified. It's right there. We are not getting it here, but we are working towards it, hoping that we get it in the afterlife. So I want to make this a bit personal here. It is not just about submission, brothers and sisters, but it's also about the quality of our submission. And I'll wrap it up with this. Not just about our submission, but about the quality of our submission. I'll give you an example and then I'll pull something from our tradition that tells you, that helps us understand it. Let us say Sheikh Anwar or Imam Anas, they asked me to do something. And I did it. But after I did it sort of begrudgingly, right? I didn't really want to do it. And then how do I respond? I go home and I talk to my family about it in a very disparaging way, right? In a negative way. And then anyone who I think is in my close circle, I talk to them about it in a very negative way. And then if I'm asked about the decision, I'm like, well, you know, mashallah, I won't say anything about it, but this is a decision that was made. So I distance myself from the decision without putting the decision on myself, but putting it on somebody else, right? Mashallah, you know, people make decisions that they want to make. So I do all of that, and then I'm still upset with them that they asked me to do this thing that I don't like. So now what do I do? When they text me, I don't respond to the messages immediately. I give them a day rest. I'll respond to that tomorrow. Or they ask me something and suddenly I'm unavailable to be present to do this. Now mind you, did I do what they asked me to do? I absolutely did it. I quote unquote submitted. But what was the quality of my submission, brothers and sisters? Is there any context for this in our Islam? Once I mention it, you will know it. Surah Al-Baqarah. When Musa alayhi salam spoke to his people and told them to sacrifice the cow, what happened? What did they do? The question went back and forth about it. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turned around and said, after all of this, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم فذبحوها وما كادوا يفعلون. And they sacrificed it, or they eventually sacrificed, but it was almost as though they didn't even really do it. Brothers and sisters, I spent this whole khutbah talking about submission. And we can go about doing our submission how we've been doing it all along. Half-heartedly. Or we can do real submission and earn the real benefits of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I pray, brothers and sisters, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives us our sins. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us a straight path. And I pray that, brothers and sisters, that He subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in gratitude. To all those who continue to support Cuba in spite of us here at Cuba, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards you and that He gives you all that is good in this life and all that is good in the hereafter. The sad reality, brothers and sisters, is that most of us aren't grateful, and the fact of that is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وقليل من عبادي الشكور. Few are truly grateful among my servants. Let us ask Allah to soften our hearts, to forgive us our sins, and to increase in gratitude. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر لي ولكم. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Brothers and sisters, remember that there is no Islam without true submission, or our Islam is challenged if we don't have true submission. And that true submission might vary at various points in time for each and every single one of us because we are dealing with different things. But as a whole, we have to really submit because that is the meaning, that's built in to this whole meaning of this word, right, of Islam. So what I want to say, brothers and sisters, for the action plan, what am I asking us to leave here with today? Your action plan, brothers and sisters, is find something that you are struggling with now, and I'm saying this for me first. Find something that you're struggling with now and really tackle it. Whatever that struggle is. Whatever that struggle is. If that struggle is giving, give. If that struggle is consuming things that we shouldn't be consuming, fight it. Figure out a way to fight that. Get into a program if we have to. Talk to someone if we have to. Yeah? If that thing is that we don't treat our family well, fight that. Make a sincere effort to treat our families better. Whatever that thing is, that is in the submission that we attribute to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then that is what I want us to look at. One thing, not at one thing. And I pray that if we are successful in that one thing, or that when we are successful in that one thing, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the other things easier for us. Make dua, brothers and sisters, make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to forgive those who are striving and struggling all around the world. Increase your charity, brothers and sisters, and most importantly, we say this all the time, make tawbah. The starting point for all of this is tawbah. And if we haven't made tawbah, if we don't consistently make tawbah, then we aren't really understanding what submission is. Tawbah has to be part of our regular regimen of spirituality. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects those who are striving and struggling all around the world. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects those who are being oppressed by those who have the power to oppress them. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects those who are being oppressed by those who have the power to oppress them. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes the power of the oppressor to oppress those whom he oppresses. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala establishes justice throughout the world. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects us from hypocrisy. Oh Allah, Ya Allah, increases in patience, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, protects us from incompetence and cowardice, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, show us a straight path and make our hearts subservient to you, Ya Allah. All increases in gratitude towards you and your messenger, Ya Allah. All increases in patience towards each other, Ya Allah. All increases in submission towards those who have authority over us, Ya Allah. O Allah, forgive us our sins and protect us from hypocrisy, Ya Allah. Allahumma innaka afu tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. الله سبحانه وتعالى قال في القرآن الكريم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين وأقيموا الصلاة.